Welcome to National Discourse.
Current affairs.
We must not extricate anybody from corruption. If any one of them is found wanting, the due course and the law must take its course.
Nation building.
Administration is slightly different from the last one in the fight against corruption.
We need to really task our leaders, who are the religious leaders, from the emir, from the bishops, from whoever they can.
Some of our village markets, there are people, they call them in Hausa yang nakama. They are like agbero in the markets. Whatever anything is not useful to you is not important to you.
Politics.
What happened in Benue might be political. It still has an undertone, not political, dated way back. If you follow history.
It's interactive.
Not part of Nigeria.
Okay.
And it will not be good for us.
When they gather their people, they tell them, these Hausa people are your enemies. When the Hausas gather together, they tell them, these Igbo people are your enemies. When the Yoruba people gather together, they say the same thing.
Who are we? We are just from the background, and today we are here in TSTV, and that is why we must propagate our own.
National Discourse. Weekdays on NCTV.
Hello, good morning, viewers, and welcome to today's episode of National Discourse. Now, we know that election is fast approaching, and of course, that's a big game and a big deal we have, facing us as a country come February 16th, of course, running into March. Now, we can't do this election without talking about peace and how we can achieve a peaceful and violence-free 2019 election. Now, before, during, and after the election, if this election is truncated with violence, the nation cannot stand. So we are going to be looking at how can we achieve peace, or how can we achieve peaceful and violence-free 2019 election. And trust me, I have someone in the studio with me who will do justice to this. So we'll go for a short break, and when we come back, we'll roll in this. I will introduce my guest, and then we'll kick it from there. My name remains Uche Oduman. Stay with us. Welcome to National Discourse.
Current affairs.
We must not extricate anybody from corruption. If any one of them is found wanting, the due course and the law must take its course.
Nation building.
Administration is slightly different from the last one in the fight against corruption.
We need to really task our leaders, who are the religious leaders, from the emir, from the bishops, from whoever they can.
Some of our village markets, there are people, they call them in Hausa yang nakama. They are like agbero in the markets. Whatever anything is not useful to you is not important to you.
Politics.
What happened in Benue might be political. It still has an undertone, not political, dated way back. If you follow history.
It's interactive.
Not part of Nigeria.
Okay.
And it will not be good for us.
When they gather their people, they tell them, these Hausa people are your enemies. When the Hausas gather together, they tell them, these Igbo people are your enemies. When the Yoruba people gather together, they say the same thing.
Who are we? We are just from the background, and today we are here in TSTV, and that is why we must propagate our own.
National Discourse. Weekdays on NCTV.
Alright, welcome back from that short break, and I have with me in the studio Mr. Kayode Bolaji. Trust me, is an expert in what we are discussing today. Good morning to you, sir.
Good morning.
And welcome to this program.
Thank you.
All right. We have election, forthcoming, very close to us, and like I said in my introduction, we can't have this election without talking about peace. We cannot, have the election without talking about how can we avoid violence before, during, and after the election. Of course, no nation survives or thrives in violence. Now, this is what we have before us. Now, how can we achieve peace and have a violence-free 2019 election? Have less than 30 days to the election time, February 16th. So how can we make sure as a country, and coming from the government quarters and all the ministries and agencies that are supposed to be in place to ensure that we achieve peaceful and violence-free 2019 election?
Thank you. Before we talk about peace, we need to, or violence-free election, we need to understand the drivers of violence in a country. What are the elements that drive violence? So you talk about injustice or perceived injustice. In electioneering processes, usually people get agitated when they feel they've been cheated or when they feel they've been disenfranchised. And that's the reason why our committee, the National Stakeholders Committee on Peaceful and Violence-Free Election, we've been working with a lot of soft power agencies of government, civil society organizations, and faith-based organizations that can help create an atmosphere of justice, making sure that votes count, making sure that people have the opportunity to cast their votes in a peaceful way, and also retraining of security agencies that will be present at each locations where people will be voting. So we've been doing a lot of sensitization. Of course, to maintain peace during election will be the responsibility of everyone, but INEC, whether it's INEC, whether it's government, whether it's a citizen, we have to make commitments not to go through a violent process. There might be opportunities that will create or instigate violence, but with the commitment of everyone, I believe that peace can be achieved.
All right, I wouldn't want to talk on that. I will still come back to that. Now, before you talk about violence, we have so many indicators of violence. We have so many things that create scenarios where you have violence or where you do not achieve peace. And of course, I want you to just give us a sharp contrast. We have elections in this country 1999, from when we started having our uninterrupted democracy. Now we have 1999, we have 2003, we have 2007, we have 2011, and we have 2015. Now, if you can give us a sharp contrast, because I know you have been on ground during these elections, of course, monitoring and all that. Now, can we take back the last three elections that we had, 2015, 2011, and 2007? Now, can you give us a sharp contrast from 2007, if there are improvements, if we had violence or we didn't achieve peace during, before and after the election? Now, let's take it off from there. 23, all right, to 2015. What happened during this time? Were there indicators of violence, and how were we able to control it as a country, and we are still standing?
Well, still standing as a country is a surprise to a lot of analysts because every indication for a breakup as a nation is clear in our system, but we've been standing. If we're to look at it, you know, democracy is quite interesting. When we started in 1999, a lot of people were not aware of their human rights. A lot of people were not aware of their rights during election, even as a nation, so they could be trampled upon by any security agency or any individual that has power and money to do that. But democracy has also helped the system to expose the rights that citizens have as citizens of the country. So the more people are exposed, the more they want to make sure that they are not disenfranchised, that their votes count, that they have a say, they have a voice, that every time there is an election, that's their own time to choose who their leaders will be. And that has also helped in a way to improve the process of election in Nigeria. That said, the previous elections have been mainly one party dominated kind of election, so it has to some extent reduced violence because the other contending parties usually will succumb because they don't have the might, they don't have the money, they don't have all the resources, let me put it that way. But this time around is a bit different. It's different in all sides actually. One, the country is being challenged. We have a lot of security challenges everywhere. We have a lot of traumatized or pockets everywhere where individuals, a group of people, communities are being traumatized because of one certain injustice or perceived injustice, waiting for an opportunity to instigate violence. election is a very good reason to instigate violence when people feel some kind of injustice have been done to them. They mix it with religion, and you know, in Nigeria we usually vote along ethnic or religious lines.
We are actually going to look at all those factors. Right.
Yeah. So that those are the things that, as an analyst, I fear the most. And that's the reason why we have to look at some of those flashpoints to say, okay, let's separate. There are issues that we agree could instigate violence, but we don't want it to mix with the politics. Because politics, when mixed with politics, politics will mix with religion, and people will die for their faith.
All right, now let's go to ethnicity. I want us to handle religion last. There's no how you can talk about election without this ethnic and religious sentiment. Now, ethnicity is a big deal so long as Nigeria is concerned. And looking at the presidential election, we have two major candidates from the two major parties. I just beg to use that word. We have the APC, we have the PDP. Now, these two big players, they are coming from the same region, if I'm correct. Now, what is your perception on what could play out when it has to do with people voting alongside ethnic and religious sentiment?
Yes, they're coming from the same region, one from the northeast and one from the northwest. But you also need to understand that they're vice presidential candidates. One is from the east.
Does that really count when it has to do with elections?
Well, it counts in,
do we as Nigerians
in getting
really,
votes.
Go there? Do we really visit that? Do we really look at the vice president?
Well, I mean, it has a way of playing out. You can't say like when Obasanjo was elected as president, Atiku was from the north. He was able to get some votes for him. He was able to convince people. The same way with Professor Yemi Osinbajo, a lot of Yoruba people voted for him. A lot of Christians voted for him versus the other candidates, you know. So maybe they don't play a significant role, but they have their own roles. And you need to also understand that it is true that President Buhari and former Vice President Atiku are from the north, but they are from two different sides of the north.
Yeah,
one is from the northeast, one is from the northwest. And they also have two distinct ideologies in terms of leadership. As a person, one is more exposed to the business community, another one is a retired general. Probably maybe a lot of his own understanding of leadership will come from that discipline. And one is more exposed to Nigerians in terms of acceptance, and the other. So they have a lot of different distinctions, and that will play out in the choice of who will become a leader.
All right, now since we are looking at how we can, avoid violence during the election, now ethnicity, we all know and we've agreed that it has a role to play. Now, how can we get these people? All right, now assuming, let me just paint a scenario to you. Assuming a candidate loses the election, or there is this perceived loss already before the election is being concluded or result is being called out, and these people have loyalists, they have people that follow them, they have followers, they have people that they can give their lives for them and all that. Now, in trying to avoid violence during and after the elections and even before the elections, what can we do as citizens? All right, now you're going to talk to all of us. What can we do, and what can the government do, or the agencies responsible do, to make sure that people don't, because of ethnicity or looking at ethnicity, or this person is from my own side and the person loses, not go up or go against peace during this election?
I'm going to talk about 3 different areas. I think the politicians have a lot of responsibilities, because usually they instigate this instruction for their followers to go in a violent way, because usually a lot of the followers will of course, there will be some kind of illustration that there's injustice, vote rigging, vote buying, and all those kind of things. So once that is done and it's mixed with religion, just like I said earlier, it will look like I'm dying for God, you know. And
Yeah,
people
sure.
have different, whether it's Christian or Islam, they have different interpretation about the afterlife. So you're losing your life will not be that important for the greater glory of what you believe your afterlife will be. Secondly, is that we lack elders in Nigeria.
Elder statement.
Elder statement. Like other countries where we've worked and where we've monitored election, when group of people come up to say, let's douse this tension, and then we will look at it as elders. The National Peace Committee that we formed in 2015 or before 2015 to look at that, which worked very well with General Abdusalami and religious leaders, the Sultan and the rest. You can see we were able to go around the country talking to people to lay down their weapons. Of course, people were angry at that time, but they listened. And at that time, the government also promoted this idea of the peace committee. It's been a struggle with this current government. Even the acceptance or the sponsorship or the opportunity to interact, you know, has been a bit difficult. But that said, there are agencies of government and civil society organizations that will be able to use to dial some of this tension, and that's why our committee is going around to talk to people. Again, it's about orientation and sensitization. It's usually somebody asks me, "What is your job?" I said, "I beg people not to fight," because the end of it, usually when you are angry, you make very wrong decisions. But the end of your anger, you will not be able to undo it. And that's where a lot of analysts like myself and others are saying to Nigerians, if we go the way of violence, nobody is going to take us. We are in between West Africa and Central Africa. There is no nation around us that will accept us as refugee. In fact, that's even when Fulani will know that they are not the same, because Chad will not accept us, Niger will not accept us, Cameroon will not accept us. They cannot contain us. So it's better we undo it. We go the peaceful way. Somebody might have to compromise. Somebody might have to say, okay, let's wait. We might have to work on our justice system so that everybody will feel, you know, some level of justice.
All right, I'll be going for a short break now. When we come back, we are going to be looking at other factors that may cause violence during and after elections. Please stay with us.
Welcome to National Discourse.
Current affairs.
We must not extricate anybody from corruption. If any one of them is found wanting, the due course and the law must take its course.
Nation building.
Administration is slightly different from the last one in the fight against corruption.
We need to really task our leaders, who are the religious leaders, from the emir, from the bishops, from whoever they can.
Some of our village markets, there are people, they call them in Hausa yang nakama. They are like agbero in the markets. Whatever anything is not useful to you is not important to you.
Politics.
What happened in Benue might be political. It still has another tone, not political, dated way back. If you follow history,
It's interactive.
Not part of Nigeria.
Okay.
And it will not be good for us.
When they gather their people, they tell them, these Hausa people are your enemies. When the Hausas gather together, they tell them, these Igbo people are your enemies. When the Yoruba people gather together, they say the same thing.
Who are we? We are just from the background, and today we are here in TSTV, and that is why we must propagate our own.
National Discourse. Weekdays on NCTV.
All right, we come back from that short break. I'm still in the studio with our analyst. I still have Mr. Kayode Bolaji with me in the studio. He's been doing a lot of good job trying to analyze this topic and of course talking to us as Nigerians how we'll be able to, you know, escape violence and of course stick to peace, which is the only language that wins in any nation. Now, coming back to you, sir, the other things or factors that might cause violence, we are looking at vote buying, We are looking at vote selling. Of course, two of them are in the same category. Now, how can we minimize that in this forthcoming election? Because you can't achieve peace during the election or after the election when there are indications that those things happened. So how can we bring that under minimal control, during these elections?
There are two ways, of course. It's for the politicians to stop giving money and for people to stop receiving it.
How possible?
But I'm just saying those are the two ways it has to end. But of course, there are also two opposite ways. The possibility of people collecting your money and not voting for you. So INEC can reduce that, like what happened in Ekiti and Osun State, where politicians will actually see that you voted for them and then give you your paycheck. I think that has been corrected by INEC. The way people cast their votes, it should be between you, and your conscience. Nobody should see you. You don't need to show anybody.
Secret ballot system.
It's a secret ballot system. So that has been improved, and I think with that, that's probably the only thing INEC can do. Of course, we can sensitize people, but I know a lot of people who are wise also. Collecting money does not mean they're voting for you. Appearing at your campaign rallies does not mean they're voting for you. It's just a way, level of poverty in Nigeria, and that can be reduced at through governance also. So for me, I think we need to continue to sensitize people, and I think we have to improve governance. We have to improve food security for people. Why would you collect 2,000 naira, 4,000 naira to vote somebody you don't like? So that's why I think orientation will do a lot in that.
Now, at the polling units now, what we are talking about now is preventive measures. How can we prevent or avoid that? Now, at the polling units, this is where these things happen.
It shouldn't happen. That's the security agencies should be able. That's why I said INEC. I should have mentioned also the security agencies. INEC have done their part in that your secret ballot is your secret ballot. Nobody else should see it. And I think they've given Nigerians enough education that this is the way it will go. In terms of giving money, that's the job of the police. That's the job of the security agencies. It should not be condoned, and anybody that is doing it should be arrested. It's not helping our democracy in any way, but of course we can't stop anything outside that environment of election, of casting your votes, whether somebody has collected money at their political party offices or not. That's where orientation will come in. That's where agencies like national orientation agencies will come in to sensitize people.
All right, now, having talked on the vote buying, vote selling thing, I want us to look at the fake news as being a very big factor, a major factor to having violence or witnessing violence during the election, because now almost everybody is active online. All right, even those in the village that are not online, they get to hear things like, I saw this on Facebook, I saw this on Twitter, I saw this on Instagram and so many other social platforms. Now, if we have fake news all over, remember what happens to people. Once you see something coming, nobody gets time, or nobody has the time to go verify the true nature or whether what is the fact. People start reacting based on what they've seen. Now, how can we regulate fake news
and hate speech?
Yes, and hate speech is coming now. Of course, hate speech brings fake news, or fake news brings
yes.
So they're intertwined. So we can just talk about two of them at the same time. So how can we avoid hate speech and fake news at a time like this?
Again, I think it's about our politics. I was on another platform when I spoke about what the vice president was basically calling the presidential candidate of PDP a thief. It was not only him, it was also the national leader of APC. And I was on another platform and I said, you see, the vice president is promoting, is telling Nigerians against hate speech and fake news. And he's calling someone a thief. So sometimes it's matching our words with our action. Election is not a do or die affair. You don't need to reduce another human being because you want to get some level of attention over him. And sometimes the people that carry messages don't actually fit the message. And that's the way I'm going to put it, because at that level, I feel like whether it's the president, whether it's the vice president, whether it's politicians or people that are candidates of political parties, because you like Nigeria, it should show in what you say about Nigerians.
At all points.
At all points. And that's the way fake news, because when you say that, your followers will think it's right.
And they'll start reacting.
And they'll start reacting, and they will even go an extra mile than what you've said. So we all need to be careful, because we're in a marked media age where nothing can be controlled online, except we bring ethics and good conscience and good behavior and good character into this. So I will encourage religious leaders, traditional rulers, and leaders of strategic spheres of influence, whether it's government, whether it's business, whether it's entertainment, to inculcate this idea of being positive or being careful with what we say, and how we say it. Especially, if we're at this age, at our time, the children coming after us, if they don't get the correct vibe from us, they will go the extra mile. We have other nations. This is where we can learn from, where respect is still very important. Those nations in Asia, you will not see, they have more media opportunities than us, but you will not see them abuse it, because there is respect. So they know how to manage one another. So I think our politicians can do a lot, by being careful with what they say.
All right. Before we go back to the committee you belong in or you belong to, I would want us to touch on the path of the religious leaders, and let's merge it with religion being a very big problem, a threat to achieving a peaceful and violence-free election. Because this people, in every religion, you have followers, and you have people that once they just hear anything from their religious leader, they've taken off from there without even thinking or even coming back to themselves to ask certain questions. Is it right or wrong? Because they see their religious leaders as role models. So whatever instructions that comes from them, they just take it up without turning back. Now, how do you think we can work around this, to achieve this peace and have violence-free election this year?
Leadership generally is about influence. And I will not be against a religious leader encouraging followers to follow a particular political idea. Of course, every human being has the right to agree with any leader or not. But leadership is about influence. And the same way we want them to encourage their followers in a particular ideology that they feel is beneficial to their followers, is the same way we want them to encourage their followers in a peaceful philosophy, a peaceful idea. And that's why we do a lot of training for religious leaders. Sometimes they don't know that some statements can actually instigate violence, because they just feel like, I'm just making my point. You don't just make your point where you have, in a country where every word you say is sensitive, because a lot of people carry so much pain and anger because of what has been done to them or what they've done to other people. So we encourage religious leaders to censor what comes out of their mouths, to count it very well, and to make sure whatever is going to come out of my mouth, is it going to destroy or is it going to edify? You can always keep your words until later when the environment is safe to say it. So whether it's Islam or Christian, the two prominent and big religion in the country, there is also a need for more sensitization, and they have the key to winning peace in Nigeria, because they have a lot of followers. People go to the mosque on Friday, a lot of Nigerians go to churches on Sunday. So in a week, religious leaders have enormous influence, I think even more than political leaders. And so if they're listening to us, they should use their good office and the role that God has given them to sensitize Nigerians more on peace.
All right, thank you very much, sir. Now, going down to the main business now, I know we just have to take time to analyze what causes violence and, of course, how we can achieve peace. And then we heard that you're part of a committee, the National Stakeholders Committee on Peaceful and Violence-Free Election. By the way, that is the reason why we are having this topic. Now, you tell us what your committee is doing and how far you've gone to make sure that your mandate is being achieved before, during, and after this election.
Yes, I like talking about the work of our committee. We started in June, so we started quite early. It was the committee also worked during the 2015 general election. So this is not the first time.
What was the impact like then?
Oh, it was. We worked with the National Peace Committee that was headed by General Abdulsalami and Bishop Kuka and the rest. We had a peace dinner. We did a lot of sensitization campaign. We worked with the Martin Luther King Center in the U.S. When Selma was released. That's basically, Selma was a movie about the story of Martin Luther King Jr. We showed the movie at a lot of religious centers, and at Sheraton we had a peace banquet where religious leaders and candidates, political candidates, made passionate appeal to their followers to embrace peace. So it was basically pushing for peace, and that's what we're doing also this time around. What we were able to mobilize a lot of soft and hard power agencies, so like the Army, the Air Force, Navy, the Secret Services, Institute for Peace, some of the soft power agencies, and civil society organizations. So I think they're numbered up to about 25 of different agencies. We came together, we inaugurated in June, and our mandate was basically to ensure that the 2019 general election is peaceful and violence-free. To some extent, we had make advocacy also, like during the Ekiti and Osun election, where we made a strong advocacy to the Office of the National Security Advisor for the retraining of the Nigerian police, because we felt like some of the activities that we saw was not good enough for our security agencies, and that had been done. You know, we were involved in some of the training to, you know, how do you deal with people, you know, during an election? Do you need to go with guns, you know, because sometimes when you show a hard power approach, people react in the hard way. But when you show a soft power approach, knowing that you have the potential to be hard, you're putting a face. You're showing people that I want to be seen as being civil until and unless you make me use my weapon. You know, so there's no need to actually carry guns to some of these centers. There's no need for that. I mean, you're not defending yourself as a policeman because nobody is attacking you. But you can put more officers at the polling units. That's enough threat for anybody that wants to carry violence, that they are law enforcement agencies and they have the potential to use gun, but they will not use it. They just want to ensure that this thing is peaceful. So by and large, these are the things we've been doing. We've been doing a lot of sensitization. We work with agencies that have presence in all the states, in all the local governments, and all the wards in Nigeria. So through some of their directors, we do a lot of sensitization. We work in partnership with traditional institutions so they can make appeals to their followers, religious institutions. They can make appeal to their followers just to ensure peace. Like I said earlier on, what is most important, yes, the election must be free and fair. That's going to keep everybody at peace in Nigeria. It's going to help everybody to believe in this project Nigeria. But it's also important that we don't go the violent way, because at that time there will not be Buhari or Atiku. We will just be Nigerians and we'll all be a bunch of refugees.
All right, we'll be going for another break. That'll be the last break we'll be having. And when we come back, we'll wrap up with this program. Please stay with us.
Welcome to National Discourse.
Current affairs.
We must not extricate anybody from corruption. If any one of them is found wanting, the due course and the law must take its course.
Nation building.
Administration is slightly different from the last one in the fight against corruption.
We need to really task our leaders, who are the religious leaders, from the emir, from the bishops, from whoever they can.
Some of our village markets, there are people, they call them in house like Nakama. They are like Agbero in the markets. Whatever anything is not useful to you is not important to you.
Politics.
What happened in Benue might be political. It it still has an undertone, not political, dated way back. If you follow history,
It's interactive.
Not part of Nigeria.
Okay.
And it will not be good for us.
When they gather their people, they tell them, these Hausa people are your enemies. When the Hausas gather together, they tell them, these Igbo people are your enemies. When the Yoruba people gather together, they say the same thing.
Who are we? We are just from the background, and today we are here in TSTV, and that is why we must propagate our own.
National Discourse, weekdays on NCTV.
Welcome to National Discourse.
Current affairs.
We must not extricate anybody from corruption. If any one of them is found wanting, the due course and the law must take its course.
Nation building.
Administration is slightly different from the last one in the fight against corruption.
We need to really task our leaders, who are the religious leaders, from the emir, from the bishops, from whoever they can.
Some of our village markets, there are people, they call them in Hausa Yang Nakama. They are like Agbero in the markets. Whatever anything is not useful to you is not important to you.
Politics.
what happened in Benue might be political. It still has an undertone, not political, dated way back. If you follow history,
it's interactive.
Not part of Nigeria.
Okay.
And it will not be good for us.
When they gather their people, they tell them, these Hausa people are your enemies. When the Hausas gather together, they tell them, these Igbo people are your enemies. When the Yoruba people gather together, they say the same thing.
Who are we? We are just from the background, and today we are here in TSTV, and that is why we must propagate our own.
National Discourse, weekdays on NCTV.
Very glad to have you back after that short break. We are just trying to wrap up on this episode. I still have Mr. Kayode Balaji, of course, our big analyst in the studio with me, still talking about how we can achieve peace, peaceful and violence-free 2019 elections. Sir, before we wrap up, I would want you to speak to the different people, stakeholders, you know, and of course the Nigerian populace, to how they can avoid overheating the polity, to ensure that we have a smooth run of election, of course, post-election and every other thing that comes by.
Okay, now, like I said, a vision is a picture of the future. What I want Nigerians to picture is to picture peace. When you know where you're going, you will always create a way to get there. Let's not picture violence in our mind, and we will not achieve violence. We will not get there if it's not in our mind. Let's all picture a peaceful Nigeria, even though we're not there yet. And then let's create opportunities to achieve peace. By, of course, I can just identify some by not spreading fake news, by not overeating the polity, by what we call in the diplomacy circle, track 2 diplomacy or preventive diplomacy. You don't have to be told to douse attention. When you have the opportunity to douse attention, you just do it. When you see your neighbor going through a violent experience, just douse it. It's your responsibility, because we all live together in a particular system. When you see that there's an opportunity to create violence or a suspicion to do it, and you think you have the confidence and the ability to stop it, stop it. And if you don't, then take it further to people who can do it better than you. As a committee, we can always be reached. Our secretariat is at the National Orientation Agency at the headquarters. By extension, all the national orientation agencies, secretariats in the country, so at state government, at local government, and at the wards, you can always reach NOA. And our committee, they are aware of our committee work, so they will get back to us, and we will be able to reach agencies that are responsible, that could take quick action to help with those violent experience. It's important for us to know as Nigerians that it's a project. And I'm speaking as somebody who has experienced a lot of traumatic experience also in Nigeria. But I believe that if we work at it together, we will achieve peace. And I want to encourage Nigerians to pursue peace.
All right, thank you very much. This is actually where we'll draw the curtain on National Discourse. But before I go, Mr. Kayode have said a whole lot of things, but I want to remind you, very importantly, of all things he said, is peace is pertinent. There is no country, no nation thrives on violence. Now, the campaign, or the tribe or the launch of the committee, the National Stakeholders Committee on Peaceful and Violence-Free Election 2019. All the drive is to ensure that we have peace. But the truth is, it begins with you. What do you do? Be a watchdog. Ensure that there are no fake news, there's no hate speeches here and there, and be your neighbor's keeper. If you see any suspicious movement or you sight it, you can go to the police, because you can't achieve peace without having a good security outfit. And like I said, it begins with you and it begins with me. Let us put our hands together. Let it be a communal effort, or an effort that is for all, to ensure that this mandate is achieved. Because if there is violence, or if the country is overheated, you will not have a hiding place to run to. Like he said, all our neighboring countries, I think they are having their issues and all that. We might not have where to run to. So let's make sure that Nigeria remains peaceful before and during the election. Thank you very much. It is Uche Uduma signing off.
Welcome to National Discourse.
Current affairs.
We must not extricate anybody from corruption. If any one of them is found wanting, the due course and the law must take its course.
Nation building.
Administration is slightly different from the last one in the fight against corruption.
We need to really task our leaders, who are the religious leaders, from the emir, from the bishops, from whoever they can.
Some of our village markets, there are people, they call them in house like Nakama. They are like Agbero in the markets. Whatever anything is not useful to you is not important to you.
Politics.
What happened in Benue might be political. It still has an undertone, not political, dated way back. If you follow history,
it's interactive.
Not part of Nigeria.
Okay.
And it will not be good for us.
When they gather their people, they tell them, these Hausa people are your enemies. When Hausas gather together, they tell them, these Igbo people are your enemies. When the Yoruba people gather together, they say the same thing.
Who are we? We are just from the background, and today we are here in TSTV, and that is why we must propagate our own.
National Discourse, weekdays on NCTV.